Most people are not happy with their lives because they're focused on the wrong things. They think to themselves, I would be happier if things were different. But that's only because you're focused on the good parts of that different thing. When you think you'll be happier if things were different, you're looking at all the good things, all the positive things. It's like when some people think they would be happier if they lived back in a day because they wouldn't have to work a 9 to 5 or an office job. They think that being a farmer is better. They think they wouldn't have to worry about all the problems in modern times. But they don't think about what problems they would have in the past if they lived in the past. And it's because they're focused on the good part, the positive things of the past. They're picking and choosing what they like about back in the day. Being a farmer or a hunter and gatherer back in the day wasn't easy. And it's like if you live in a first world country where you actually have rights and you complain about the rights that you have, there's no way you would be happier back in the day when there were kings and emperors. You wouldn't have as many rights as you do right now. And those people that think corruption is bad now, imagine back in the day. It was way worse because you didn't have technology to actually keep record of things, to actually be able to track things better. So just imagine how bad corruption was back in the day. Kings and emperors probably didn't really even know what was actually going on outside of their palace, outside of the state or province that their palace was in. It's like what I said in one of my past videos. Even if the emperor or the king were to visit a state or a province or a city just to see how everyday people are doing, even if those everyday people are starving, the people in power in that state, the high-ranking officials in that state, would try to make everything look like it's thriving. Make everything look good, make everyone seem like they're so happy when the emperor or the king visits. So the emperor's perspective of the world wasn't accurate because what they saw wasn't real. And when the emperor goes back to the palace, then the real conditions of that state actually starts to show. People are starving. The government doesn't care, but the emperor doesn't know that. Or when the king or emperor sends out a high-ranking official to see how everyone is doing, there might have been corruption, bribery, to mask how bad things really are. Or the government in that state is on their best behavior when they're getting checked up on, and they're able to hide how bad things really are in that state. So it's like when people say they would be much happier back in the day, it's because you're focusing on the good parts of back in the day. You're not thinking about how bad things were back in the day. Constant wars. There really wasn't much stability. People didn't really have as many rights as they do now. It was always about conquering and rebellions. And there was famine. People didn't have food to eat. If there were droughts, if the weather wasn't good, they wouldn't have any food as a farmer. And being a hunter and gatherer, there was no guarantee that you would have a successful hunt. You might be starving for days. It's like people in third world countries think life in a first world country is like luxury. You have rights. Even if you live paycheck to paycheck, you still eat pretty good compared to people in third world countries that are starving. You know, people that are starving are not thinking about relationships, how many likes they get. They're only worried about having enough food to survive. And the only thing they think about is as long as they have enough food to survive, they're happy. They would be glad to work a 9 to 5. They would be so happy to be able to work an office job. Because in third world countries, they might work every day of the week, 15 hours a day. There's no holiday offs. There's no paid vacations. So to them, an office job is like luxury. It's like the happiest life in the world. But then people that work in office jobs wish they didn't work in office jobs. It's like humans can never be happy because they're always focused on the wrong things. When you don't have enough food, you worry about food. When you have enough food, then you have time to worry about other things. Finding a good relationship, having a nicer car. But it's like, if you're always focused on the next thing and the next thing, the things that you don't have, it's hard to be happy when you think that way. Nothing is enough. Because even when you do achieve something, even when you are able to get that nicer car, then you're going to focus on the next thing that you want. You're going to focus on how happy other people are. You know, it's like people who really want relationships, who only focus on getting into relationships. But it's like, if you focus on how happy you would be in a relationship and you don't have a relationship, you're going to be miserable. But then when you get into a relationship and you don't focus on maintaining it, and there's a lot of problems and arguments, and let's say the relationship doesn't work out, or you got married and then you had to divorce, and let's say you had to split half because of the divorce, then your view would be different. Then a relationship isn't so happy. Then you wouldn't view relationships as something to be happy about. You would view it as a headache, because all the things you have to go through to try to have a happy relationship. And if it doesn't work out, divorce, heartbreak, it's about what you focus on. When you look at everyone in a relationship and you think they're so happy and you're so miserable because you're single, when you get into a relationship, if you can't maintain it, if you don't know how to communicate, if you always argue, then your view of a relationship is not so good anymore. Then you'll think, oh, a relationship doesn't make you happy. Oh, everyone that was in a relationship that seemed so happy, were they really happy? So a lot of times when people think they would be happier if their life was different, would you really be happier? Because if your life was different, then you would have different problems. You would think differently. You would have different things to stress about. And that stress would stress you out just as much as the things that you're stressing about now. It's like people who have nothing and think, oh, if they just had more money, if they had more wealth, if they had more status, they would be happier. But that's because you're focusing on the good parts of that life. But let's say you was born into wealth, then you would have a different problem. Let's say you was born into wealth, but you had no skills, you had no ambitions, and you couldn't achieve anything. But then you would feel miserable anyways, because you would think that you're useless, that you've never accomplished anything, that you've never achieved anything, that you never created a life for yourself. You never built a life for yourself. Everything was handed down to you. And you actually want to be someone that built their own life. And you will want to achieve something that you're proud of. But because you didn't achieve anything, you're just as miserable as someone who doesn't have any money, that wasn't born into wealth. That would affect you just as much. There are people that were born into wealth that are just as depressed as someone who is poor. If you live in a first world country, technically you have more wealth and you live a way better life than someone in a third world country who's starving, who has no air conditioning, has no flushable toilet, don't have clean drinking water. So happiness really depends upon who you compare yourself to. If you're always comparing yourself to other people's lives and think about all the things you don't have, how much better other people are doing, and how much worse you're doing in life, then you're never going to be happy. But if you compare yourself to people who are doing worse than you, then psychologically you would be more happier. But people don't do that. People mostly compare themselves with people who they think are doing better than them in life. And that's why they're miserable. Life is really about what you focus on. If you focus on the good things, the happy things, and you're optimistic, you'll be happy. If you're always focused on the things that you don't have and how other people are doing so much better than you, other people are more successful than you, if you're always focusing on everything that you don't have and everything that you wish you had, you're gonna be miserable. You have to focus on the things that you do have and focus on the good things, on the positive things, and be grateful for the things that you have. Most people focus on getting things, but they don't maintain the things that they get, and they end up losing it. Like a relationship. People are so focused on getting into relationships, but they don't focus on maintaining it, and they just end up losing that relationship. Their girlfriend ends up leaving them anyways. Everyone's focused on getting a nicer car, but do everyone know how to maintain that nicer car? Because if you don't maintain it, the car is going to break down and you're going to end up not having that car anyways. You have to take care of the things that you get in life, or else you're going to lose it. You have to appreciate the things that you have in life, or else you're going to be miserable because you're going to focus on everything that you don't have. If you constantly focus on the things that you lack, then it will seem like you have nothing. There's so many things that people take for granted now, and they focus on how hard their life is without realizing how easy things are now. You no longer have to hunt for food. You could just go to the grocery store and you could just buy food. You no longer have to walk long distances. You could just drive. You could just take a bus. Life is so much easier now. But when you're born in an easy life, everything seems hard. You have a lot to complain about. You know, people who actually lived hard lives, they complain the least. It's like people just want different things. People always just want what they can't have or what they don't have. And if they just focus on all the happy things and everything that they do have, they will be so much happier.